Production funding for Another View comes from the Hampton Citizens Unity Commission, using the time, talents, and skills of a broad base of citizen volunteers to help break down racial and cultural barriers, working to achieve the City of Hampton's community plan for a healthy, diverse community. And from the African American Programming Advisory Group, community visionaries assisting WHRO to engage, enlighten, educate, and entertain all communities in Hampton Roads. And now, Another View.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Welcome to Another View. Tonight, a disturbing statistic. In the past year, 6 current or former high school varsity football players have been shot or killed by gunfire. They are all African American and were all outstanding athletes. The rumors are running rampant. Some say it's gang-related. Some assume they are products of dysfunctional families. Others chalk it up to life in the city. But what's really going on? Joining us to talk about the issues and some solutions are Elisha Cadillac Harris, head football coach of Indian River High School, Dr. Adolph Brown, motivational speaker and clinical psychologist, and the Vice Mayor of Norfolk, Anthony Burfoot. Welcome to the program, gentlemen. How are you?
Thanks for having us.
Good. Well, it's an awful statistic, but I have a question for you. Are we paying attention because these are 6 athletes? Because from what I'm reading, there are young men being killed almost every day in this community. Why all of a sudden are people starting to pay attention because these athletes were killed? Cadillac, what do you think?
Well, I just think that it's getting some attention simply because when you lose a child at that age as an athlete, and since people come out and watch them perform on Friday night or Saturday or throughout the course of the week, whether it be basketball or football, what have you, that attention of reading about an athlete and then finding them shot or killed is disturbing. It's and it's heartfelt, and it's something that has to be done about it. And now the community at large is taking some steps in the right direction, but there is a lot to be done in this area. I think we've just touched the tip of the iceberg in terms of what needs to be done, but we need to get the message out that and develop some steps so young people can make better decisions, and parenting too.
Let me ask you, Vice Mayor, is it gang related? Is that what the issue is?
Some of the violence that we're seeing is gang related, but whether it's gang related or not, it's too much. There's too much violence that is taking place. There are too many lives that are being lost in our community. Young men are getting struck down at early ages, 14, 15, 12, 16 years old, before they can begin to understand what life is all about, before they even get a chance to participate in the dream of living. We're burying them, and that shouldn't be the norm. And so we have a lot of work to do in terms of trying to turn the tide, not put a Band-Aid on this issue, but really roll up our sleeves and do the work. And I've often said that in order to solve a problem, you have to admit that you have a problem.
Exactly. Right.
And within the black community, we have to admit that there is a problem. And it's not going to take one group of people to heal this epidemic that's taking place across the country. It's going to take the community as a whole.
So everybody needs to step in order to make a difference,
regardless of socioeconomic background.
Absolutely, and we're going to get to that point in just a minute. But Adolph, from a psychological perspective, when a 8-year-old says to you, "I don't think I'm going to live until I'm to be 21," talk to us a little bit about what's going on.
They have what's called just foreshortened future. They think that the world is unpredictable. It goes back to those athletes and why those athletes are getting so much attention, Barbara. If they were just high risk or at risk, it would almost be, you have people in society that would say, well, they're on the trajectory for that to happen. But then you have athletes who we would say have potential with purpose. High-risk children.
Because they have something that they're working towards
versus
and that they're a part
potential without purpose.
Sure.
So now you have it happen to these athletes, and now people are saying, well, they had their whole life ahead of them. When an 8-year-old says that, I don't think I'm going to live to be an adult, it's serious. It means that there's a hopelessness, there's a fear, there's also a lack of role models in that 8-year-old's life that are showing them that you can grow up, that you can make it.
Now, both of you, Anthony and Cadillac, are coaches or have coached. At some point, you were coached by Coach Harris here, which I found out about while I was doing my research. That's pretty cool. But what are the kids telling you? What are they talking about? Because I know they've got to have a perspective on this that is probably very different from those of us who are well up in age.
Some of the kids actually believe. I had a gentleman in my school last week. He was praising the fact that today is my 25th birthday. He was like, man, I thought I'd never get here to see 25. Wow. Then he went on to explain all the brothers that was with him in his classes that were no longer there anymore. And it's a sad case when the age of 25, you begin to think, this is such a great monument in your life.
When we were growing up, by the time you turned 25, you were starting your family,
exactly.
you were, you know, getting your career going, and life looked grand going forward.
Right. What I've learned to do is listen to these young people, and listen attentively to what they have to say. When the young man was killed over at Maury, and I watched the newscast, there was a young man that said, you know, he was going to make it out. It's too late for me, but he was going to make it out. This young man was about 16 years old. And so, again, that hopelessness in terms of these young men feeling that they can't make it out of these communities. So what is in these communities that's enabling these young men to feel that they can't make it out? And so...
Is it socioeconomic? Is it because they're poor?
No.
And are we making a generalization in that sense?
Poverty is not a disability.
Yes.
And that's something that the community needs to understand. That's something that the public educational arena needs to understand. Poverty is not a disability. Now, being a realist, we all understand that not every child in public education is going to be a rocket scientist. But what we also have to realize is that a rocket scientist can come from anywhere. Projects, trailer parks, anywhere. Problem is, are we looking there for them? So we got to be careful sometimes when we talk about socioeconomics. We got to be careful when we talk about genetics, because you're talking about things that are unchangeable. Well, at least children are born into that condition.
That situation,
exactly.
Right.
You know, and one of my favorite theorists talks about genetics may load the gun, but it's the environment that pulls the trigger. What are we doing as a people? What are we doing as political leaders, coaches, the faith communities? Parents, what are we doing?
That was one of the major concerns and criticisms, especially when Charles Humphrey was killed, that we were reading in the paper, and people just exploded, you know, accusing this boy of coming from a family that was totally dysfunctional, and it actually turned out not to be that case at all. But as a society, are we so quick to judge that we just want to write these people off?
Yes.
So what do you think, Anthony?
I think so. I think the commonality in all of these young men that were murdered, that they were all out after 12, 2 o'clock in the morning. And so you had a community of folk to blame that on lack of parenting, that a young man would be out that time of night. But I think we got to look past that. Because the reality of it is you could play Monday morning quarterback all day long.
Exactly.
But the reality of it is that we're losing these young men, and we got to ask ourselves why. You know, whether he was walking at 3 o'clock in the morning, that gives no one the right to take his life. And so we have to stay focused on the issue at large. And what is the mindset of these young people that we're dealing with today? Now, you can go back and you could me personally, I tried to understand why we're dealing with the rash of murders that we're dealing with today. What are these young men thinking? They're committing these heinous crimes, and so what I look at is, if you go back to the early 80s, during the height of the drug trade, and I could go no further than Norfolk to explain this, we had a lot of young ladies in these communities that were impregnated, but also using crack. There was a lot of babies in Norfolk General born that were crack babies. A lot of these young men today are 20, 19, 22, 23, 24, 25.
That's the age group.
And you're seeing these young men, they walk around looking normal, but there's a chemical imbalance. And then when you add alcohol, cocaine, and marijuana to that, these young men can't reason. And they are pulling triggers, they are making mistakes that are costly mistakes that are costing them their lives and other young men their lives. And when you go into the jails and talk to them and ask these young men, why did you do it? They can't tell you why.
Because they don't have, they can't connect the dots.
Senseless murders over nothing. You know?
Over, you stepped on my shoe.
Exactly.
When you were. So what are some of the solutions? What can we do?
Well, we can redirect.
Where do we start, I guess,
Well,
is the
one of the
better
things
place.
is you got a lot of young people today running around trying to be what they think is an adult. They want to epitomize adult status. And by doing so, you have young people becoming pregnant because that in their community means I'm an adult. You have young men carrying guns. In my community, if I can protect myself, I'm a man. So we have to kind of get rid of this foreshortened future mentality whereby these young people are eating dessert first on every level. Because life is going to be over so soon, I got to get my cars, I got to get my
hurry up and get it.
I got to get it, got to get mine. That's where one place we can start. Another place, accountability and responsibility at home with parents, with guardians.
But Adolph, and let me ask you this, Cadillac, because when you have a lot of these parents who are not much older than the kids they are parenting, and they didn't have the guidance that they needed also. I mean, at some point, how do you turn the cycle around?
Well, it's got to come from more than just parents, because of when you look at the dichotomy of parents and what is happening with parents and the divorce rate and all those factors, you have to look deeper, and it's got to be the teachers, and it's got to be churches, as we said before, and the aunts and the uncles who are aware of how a child needs to develop. And instead of them having to raise themselves and being raised by the television versus being raised by two parents or by one parent or by a professional who cares about a child and can direct them in the right way to go.
You know, there's a conservative talk show person whose name I can't remember right off the top of my head, but she says that single parent homes are the problem.
No.
I think that's
part of the problem, not the problem.
I wouldn't allow somebody off the hook for that. There's a lot of wonderful mothers out here that have done a wonderful job, tremendous job raising their young people. And so if you go back historically and look at the black family, the man was always out working and the woman was the one taking care of home.
That's right.
And so that has always been the backbone of the black community. But what, in terms of government, what our role is, that when you look at the communities that these young men come from, they're very fragile communities. The middle class have left, the upper middle class have left. There's no role models in these communities. We have to rebuild these communities, invest in the infrastructure of these communities, and bring middle to upper income families back to create a formula that would attract commercial and retail development, to create jobs in these communities, to allow these young people to see positive role models in those communities, see people going to work every day, and allow these young persons to see themselves dream.
But Anthony, you know, I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a minute, because when we see these communities being regentrified, usually it's white people moving back in, right?
No, I just did Broad Creek, okay, right off Virginia Beach Boulevard in Ballantyne, and that was the former site of 2 public housing communities. And most of the people said, well, you know, you got gentrification, or you're not going to allow the people to come back. I made sure that everybody that wanted to come back to that community came back to that community. But what I did say is that, you know, we shouldn't be building 21st century, in the 21st century, we shouldn't be building 21st century public housing. We should be giving people real opportunity. We shouldn't be oppressing people. And so what we did was we put the ball in the people's court. We said that, look, we're going to give you an opportunity to change your social and economic tide. We're going to create a new paradigm, and that's what we did. We allowed people, we created jobs for folk to come back. Everybody that wanted a decent place to raise their family had that opportunity to do so. And that community today will be the first African-American community in the city of Norfolk that will be able to sustain retail and commercial development at the highest level.
That is fantastic.
And we have doctors living in that community. We have pharmacists, lawyers, engineers living next to people that pay $50 a month, $100 a month, $200 a month. We have a 9 o'clock curfew in that community. So it's all about accountability, and it's all about creating the infrastructure that will allow people to succeed. And I'll say this last point. When you go back in the early 40s and 50s and 60s, we weren't losing the young people in the schoolhouse. And the schoolhouses today have far more technology. The infrastructure of these schools look far more better than they did yesterday, but they were enriched from the communities that they came from, because the community had middle, upper income, and low income all living in that community.
So you need that mixture in order for people to have those role models. Let me ask you guys a question that I heard on a television show a little while ago. With the election of Barack Obama, the question was, whose image is going to help raise the black community? Would it be Barack's image, or would it be 50 Cent?
I don't think it's necessarily an image issue as much as it is a message issue. You have 50 Cent who kind of reinforced what I was talking about earlier about
got to get mine now.
He says die, what is it, die trying, or get rich or die or something, right, or die trying. Barack says, President Barack Obama says, the bottom has fallen out, but I've broken the ceiling. So now you have a choice to fall or fly.
So then it becomes back to the individual to take that responsibility. That's the individual.
You have a choice. I've broken the ceiling. Yes, this financial floor has fallen from under all of us, but you have a choice to fly or fall. One of the things that we're not talking enough about today, Barbara, is relationships. It doesn't cost a dime. You ask, where does it start? It starts with relationships, coaches. It starts with our politicians who actually care and who are given a hard time because they care so passionately. Relationships. We have kids who have loss and abandonment issues. When you talk about dysfunctional families, loss and abandonment, many of these children have been through more in their young lives than most of us have in our adult lives. Right. Wow. They push teachers away because how can I trust a teacher if my first relationships were letdowns and disappointments? So when that happens, what do we have to do as a community? We have to engage them. It doesn't cost a dime. With all the budget cuts and everything going on around us, relationships are free.
It's back to building those relationships, talking with each other, interacting with each other. Gentlemen, we could talk about this all day. Honest to goodness, I can't believe the time has gone by that quickly. And I want to get you all back at different times so that we can hone in on some more very specific things that are going on within the communities. But I want to thank you so much for joining us. Elisha Cadillac Harris, who is the head coach of Indian River High School, head football coach, and Adolph Brown, who is a psychologist and motivational speaker, and Vice Mayor Anthony Burfoot. Thank you so much for joining us. And when we come back, tips on your health and your wealth, but first a look at what's going on around Hampton Roads. Welcome back to the program. In tonight's lifestyle segment, Lisa Godley spent some time with another View health expert, Dr. Khadijah Jordan. They have updated information on fibroid tumors. And then we check in with our money mentor, Eric Labatt, for more tax tips for the self-employed.
Barbara, lots of women have problems with fibroids, but having a hysterectomy may not be your only option. I'm here with another View's expert on women's health issues, Dr. Khadijah Jordan. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And she is about to show us some alternatives. What's out there? What can be done to help them?
Well, you can actually be referred by your gynecologist or your primary care to an interventional radiologist. There are 2 programs in this area. Chesapeake Regional Medical Center has one program, and the Hampton Roads Center for Fibroid Embolization are here, and they take care of women by putting a catheter in our femoral artery. That's a blood vessel in our groin. They thread this catheter up to the uterine artery and place small particles, very tiny. This is actually blown up. So they're very tiny, And these particles become a wall and stop the blood flow to the fibroid. And once this happens over time, and you usually know within 6 months how you're going to do. They usually follow you with MRIs, not an ultrasound. And the fibroid usually shrinks. Ladies can have some discharge through the vagina. Some fibroids will decrease, but then other ladies may have fibroids in other areas of the uterus that may grow. So you still need to be followed by your gynecologist.
How long can a woman expect to be in the hospital after having this procedure?
The fibroid embolization, it's usually an overnight stay. They like to monitor you for your pain control, and then you're back to work in about 1 to 2 weeks.
I'm here with Eric Labat, personal finance consultant of the Labat Consulting Group and Another View's money mentor. What are some of the common misconceptions people have about deductions when it comes to a business?
One that comes to mind is paying your children. Paying your children a wage instead of giving them allowance is a tax deduction for the business owner. So millions of people give their children allowances, but if they're not in business, it can never be used as a tax deduction.
So it doesn't matter their age?
It's the law says from ages 7 to 18.
What about space when it comes to your home-based business? Say you've converted a bedroom to an office. What of that is deductible?
Well, you take the square footage of that space and subtract it from the total square footage. And then whatever you use for your utilities, your lighting, cleaning, if someone comes in and cleans it for you, then you subtract that from the overall space. And then that portion only, is deductible.
With the inauguration of President Obama comes a so-called new look at the African-American family that hasn't been prevalent since the days of The Cosby Show. But the question is seeing an intact, loving African-American couple raising 2 bright, energetic children something new? Lisa Godley tells us that there are those in the African-American community who would beg to differ.
It's been a while since the nation has seen a president and first lady as affectionate toward one another as Barack and Michelle Obama. But can the Obamas' loving relationship and commitment to family change the way we look at our own relationships or change other races' perceptions of black family relationships? We took these questions to the streets of downtown Norfolk to see what people think.
They look like a strong black family to me. Like I said, they're loving, and from what they portray, I think the country will get a sense of warmness and loving from them.
It's definitely going to set another standard.
And this just showed, even in the public eye, that he loves her and she loves him, and no matter how hard something is, you've always got your love for one another.
Norfolk psychiatrist Dr. Patricia King-Jones says families can build healthy relationships like the Obamas by sharing time together and talking about things on a daily basis. She goes on to say couples don't have to always agree, but it's important to talk about any and all the issues. One Chesapeake couple who's been happily practicing that for 27 years is Tyrone and Linda Davis.
We have disagreements, we don't agree on everything. I think it would be really boring if we did. But I think the main thing is we just have a lot of fun. We do crazy things. My husband and daughter gang up on me all the time, and we tease each other. But it goes round robin, because my daughter and I will tease him, and we'll tease her. So as a family, we just have a lot of fun.
Okay.
All right, stop cheating. We realize that in this world, you just can't make it by yourself. You need a nucleus. People that love you, care about you, support you, and family to me offer that.
Both Tyrone and Linda grew up in 2-parent households and have worked to emulate their parents' relationships. They say growing up, most of their friends also had 2 parents in the household. They believe the media doesn't want to depict black families as intact, but say many are. Their strong relationship has definitely shaped the life of their only daughter, Tia, who recently captured the crown at the Miss Oscar Smith High School pageant.
They definitely have a direct influence on my life, whether it's fussing at me to clean up my room and get my homework done, or if it's to give me some advice about applying to college or planning my career. Not just now, but definitely in the mental stage of my life when I was younger. My mom and dad have always been the direct influence in my life, which has been a blessing.
The Davises believe the Obamas' loving relationship will change the way many people view black families.
What's so important about this particular family is that the first family is most interviewed family, most photographic family in the world. So therefore, whoever's in that position, which families, there's always going to be a lot of highlight and attention drawn to that particular family. It's great that an African-American family is in that position.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
That's it for this edition of Another View. We'd love to hear from you. Check out our website, www.anotherview.tv. Email us at anotherview@whro.org or write us at 5200 Hampton Boulevard, Norfolk 23508. Next week, prostate cancer, the myths and the facts. We have information for men and the women in their lives, so do join us. Good night.
Production funding for Another View comes from Hampton's 400th Anniversary Committee and the Hampton Neighborhood Commission, partnering with neighborhoods throughout the city, working hand in hand to create vibrant places we are proud to call home and celebrate. And from the African American Programming Advisory Group, community visionaries assisting WHRO to engage, enlighten, educate, and entertain all communities in Hampton Roads.